Some monsters don't need claws, fangs, or a villainous monologue to be terrifying. Some just need a smile. And that's where Dandelo comes in, a creature so deceptively ordinary, yet so unsettling that even in the Dark Tower series, where horrors and creepy nightmares are just another Tuesday, he still manages to be uniquely disturbing. Dandelo isn't a demon, a sorcerer, a robot, or a walking paradox. No, Dandelo is far worse. He's funny. So what exactly is he? How does he fit into the Dark Tower's mind-bending mythos? What's the deal with his true form? And most importantly, why are the nicest always the ones who turn out to be the worst? In this marvelous video, let's find out how a creature that runs on comedy ends up being one of Stephen King's most terrifying creations. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is Dandelo, the monster that feasts on laughter? If you're a fan of King's universe, you probably already know that the man has a thing for terrifying, otherworldly creatures that thrive on fear. I know, the first name that pops into your head is Pennywise, the creepy smiling clown dude from Maine. But Dandelo? He's like Pennywise's equally messed up cousin, minus the balloons. We first meet Dandelo in the Dark Tower 7, the Dark Tower, and let's just say, his introduction is as eerie as it is unforgettable. He introduces himself as Joe Collins, and at first, he just seems like a chatty old guy. He lived on the Odd Lane, in a lonely, crumbling house near the Dark Tower, eager to welcome exhausted travelers with food, shelter, and some lighthearted jokes. Seems harmless, right? Well, that's the trick. Dandelo is a psychic vampire, a being that doesn't just kill for the fun of it, well, maybe a little, but actually feeds on emotions, specifically laughter and happiness, sucking the life out of his victims by making them giggle themselves to death. Imagine being laughed to death, not because something is actually funny, but because you literally can't stop. That's Dandelo's game. And the scariest part? He almost gets away with it. His horror isn't loud or obvious. It sneaks up on you, like a bad joke that turns into a nightmare. Manipulator of minds. Dandelo's role in the Dark Tower. Dandelo's origins are a mystery. However, he was once a stand-up comedian in the United States, before ending up in All-World. But that was almost certainly a lie. At some point after arriving in All-World, Dandelo settled in a cottage on Odd Lane, deep in the white lands of Empathica. So, Roland, Susanna, and Oi make their way toward the Dark Tower when they stumble upon a rundown house in the middle of nowhere. The place is quiet, too quiet. And if horror stories have taught us anything, it's that creepy, isolated homes are never a good sign. Then, out walks Joe Collins, the cheerful, talkative guy who seems way too happy to see them. He insists they come inside, offering food, warmth, and conversation. Seems too good to be true, right? Because it is. Joe seems friendly, too friendly, and he immediately starts cracking jokes, puns, one-liners, a full-on comedy routine. And here's where things get seriously sinister. So what does he do? He does what all great predators do. He sets a trap. At first, Joe's jokes are just that, jokes. Not particularly funny, but harmless enough. Then, something off starts happening. The more Roland laughs, the weaker he feels. His body feels heavy, his vision swims, his limbs stop responding, and his mind starts fogging over. It's like being drugged, but instead of a pill or a potion, it's the jokes doing the damage. And yet, Dandelo keeps going, throwing out punchlines like a serial killer sharpening his knife. Dandelo is feeding off of him, draining Roland's life force with every chuckle. The joy and laughter that should be making him feel lighter is actually making him weaker, closer to death, and he doesn't even realize it, because that's the trap. By the time Susanna figures it out, Roland is already gasping for breath, barely holding on to consciousness. But Roland and Susanna aren't the first ones to get caught in Dandelo's death trap. Locked away in a shed behind the house is Patrick Danville, a young, starving artist who has been Dandelo's prisoner for who knows how long. This poor guy has been drained of emotion over and over, kept just alive enough to barely function. To make sure Patrick never tried to fight back or call for help, Dandelo cut out his tongue. Patrick's face is skin and bones, his eyes hollow, his ability to speak almost non-existent. But Patrick isn't just any random victim. This guy is important. He has the power to draw things into existence, and can even erase them. Then something strange happened. Susanna noticed a lesion on her skin that started bleeding. She excused herself to the bathroom, where she found a cryptic warning left from none other than Stephen King. as a way of repaying her for saving his life by inserting himself into the narrative, even referring to himself as a deus ex machina. King blurs the line between fiction and reality, showing how the story is shaped by both its characters and its writer. The message tips Susanna off to Dandelo's true nature. It's only then she starts putting the pieces together, Roland slumping over, unable to move. The eerie way Joe Collins' jokes seem to take more than they give, that she realizes the truth. Joe's not just a weird old man with an odd sense of humor. He's a monster, a psychic vampire trying to fatten them up for his next meal. Once Susanna realizes what's happening, she acts fast. No time for debates. She returned and snapped Roland out of the creature's influence. Together, they gunned Dandelo down before he could finish draining them dry. And this is where things get truly disgusting. The moment the bullets hit, Joe Collins starts to change. And let me tell you, his true form, not so funny anymore. The old man's disguise melts away, and what's left behind is something unnatural, grotesque, and absolutely inhuman. An insectoid, vampire-like creature with hollow sockets where eyes should be, decayed skin, and rotting. Not quite Pennywise's otherworldly terror, but horrifying in its own way. Dandelo, once a joke-cracking old man, dies screaming. And just like that, his creepy, joy-sucking comedy show was over for good. Laughter that kills. Dandelo's appearance, personality, and powers. Stephen King has a way of making the most innocent things absolutely horrifying. Balloons, hotels, cars, and now, laughter itself. Dandelo is a monster unlike any other, a shape-shifting psychic vampire that feeds not on blood or flesh, but on joy. His entire existence revolves around making you laugh, so he can suck the life out of you while you do it. Dandelo doesn't have one true form, like a lot of Stephen King's nastier creatures. Pennywise. He is a shapeshifter who wears disguises to lure in his prey. When Roland and Susanna first meet Dandelo, he appears as Joe Collins, an overzealous old man with a big cheesy grin and an over-the-top sense of humor. He looks harmless, even welcoming, like the kind of guy who'd wave at you from his front porch while sipping a cup of coffee. But soon, the cracks start to show. There's something off, but by the time you notice, it's a little too late. When Susanna shoots him, his fake human skin starts to peel away, revealing something hideous underneath. He's not quite human, not quite alien, just a grotesque, decayed thing that has spent centuries preying on unsuspecting travelers. Imagine something between a rotting vampire and a giant grinning bug, and you're probably not far off. Deception isn't just a tactic for Dandelo, it's his way of life. His whole persona is built around being an extremely jovial entertainer, and that's exactly what makes him dangerous. A master manipulator, he comes up with elaborate lies with the kind of detail that makes them nearly impossible to question. His rundown home, in reality, is dirty and suffocatingly hot, but his illusions make it seem spotless and inviting. Even Patrick Danville's screams, echoing from the basement, are masked by the sound of the wind. Dandelo isn't just a liar, he's a predator with terrifying abilities. Laughter is his weapon, a way to drain life, while his prey is too distracted to notice. His telepathic ability forces amusement, even when there's no reason for it, making Roland laugh at jokes that should have been impossible for him to understand. The more his victims laugh, the stronger he becomes, visibly growing younger within minutes of feeding. For Dandelo, this isn't just about survival, he enjoys it. He doesn't just kill because he has to, but because he likes the process and watching people fade away. And while he can manipulate emotions and perceptions, he is still vulnerable to conventional weapons. In the end, those weaknesses cost him his life. Susanna sees through him, breaks a spell, and makes sure that his last act is his final one. Dandelo versus Pennywise. Are they the same entity? Dandelo and Pennywise have more in common than people want to admit. Both shapeshifts, both manipulate reality to lure in their victims, and both survive by feeding on human emotions. The main difference? Their flavor of prey. Pennywise preys on fear, while Dandelo preys on joy, meaning one makes you scream while the other makes you laugh until there's nothing left of you. Much like Pennywise, Dandelo can change his appearance to trick his victims. When Roland first encounters him, Dandelo appears as an old man named Joe Collins, just a lonely guy with a few bad puns. But it's all an illusion, the same kind of mind trick Pennywise pulls when he appears as a clown, a rotting leper, or a child's worst nightmare. Not only does Dandelo disguise himself, but he also warps the world around him, very similar to Pennywise's tricks. As we already know, Dandelo alters the way his victims perceive his home, making a dingy, overheated shack seem safe and inviting. Pennywise does the same when Beverly Marsh revisits her childhood home, making a decayed apartment feel warm and welcoming, until the illusion breaks. While not officially confirmed, many believe Dandelo belongs to the same supernatural species as Pennywise, creatures known as glamours, or Todash monsters, ancient beings that manipulate reality and emotions. However, one theory suggests that Dandelo might not just be similar to Pennywise, and could even be Pennywise's descendant. At the end of it, it's revealed that Pennywise laid eggs in his lair beneath Derry, Maine. Since Derry is believed to be a portal to the Dark Tower itself, it's entirely possible that one of those eggs hatched and made its way to Empathica, settling near the tower as Dandelo. While Stephen King has gone on record saying Dandelo and Pennywise aren't the same entity, but he does acknowledge that they're likely the same kind of creature, although both creatures are terrifying. But there's something uniquely unsettling about laughing yourself into the grave, just a smidge. Marvelous verdict. Dandelo isn't the kind of villain who would hunt you down with a machete in hand. Instead, he entertains you to death. It's villainy with a smile, and honestly, that's way more unsettling than any snarling monster. Think about it. If your favorite comedian was secretly draining your soul while cracking jokes, don't tell me that Netflix's stand-up special does not feel a little riskier now. We expect monsters to look like, well, monsters. But Dandelo hides behind the charm and takes something as natural as humor, something we turn to for relief, and weaponizes it. Although the guy had a killer routine, but in the end, the show got canceled. Poor Dandelo. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.